I'm only just noticing this as I'm about to film, but the funny thing that it says on the back, there's a blurb for a marvelously detailed world with an engrossing adventure from a unique perspective is funny to me because the very first thought I had about this book is it's very familiar. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. This is the first book in the Empire of the Wolf trilogy, and I remember hearing a whole bunch of buzz about this one a while back, and now it's my understanding a lot of people like the first book more than the others, but it's one that I had been curious to try for a while, and I have a hardcover set now of the trilogy, so it was a good time to do it. This was one that was in my pile of possibilities that got picked from a patron wheel spin, and I was excited to get to it. And like I said, the first thing that really stood out is I found the premise to be really, really familiar because while this is fantasy and the other book is historical fiction, it's a remarkably similar premise to Speaks the Nightbird by Robert McCammon, where we are following a justice who has a really strong morals and perceived sense of justice, but we're not following that as the main character. We're following the young clerk who was an orphan and who was taken in and trained by the justice. So yeah, I mean, quite literally the same premise, although the execution is really different. Although Speaks the Nightbird is specifically about a witch trial, and this book opens up with basically a witch trial too. So I have to feel like there might have some of it feels like it had to have been intentional just because that is remarkably the same. But that's really what stood out. So that's why the blurb was so funny to me here. And it's not to say like this is plagiarized or this is the same. It goes in very different directions. It just is, I mean, remarkably close there with it. So that is what immediately stood out. And I thought it was interesting to see where this was going to go. But my biggest critique about this book is just it felt really familiar. It didn't feel like it was anything that was like new or fresh. It just most of it I could tell where things were going to be going. You had a good feel for what was going to be happening, and so that was kind of I think what kept me from getting totally pulled in and engaged. It's just there wasn't really a lot of like, oh, that's surprising, or I wonder what they're going to do here. It just felt like a lot of it was pretty familiar, and the differentiation I think is the magic, which I did find to be interesting, and I think we're going to delve a lot more into that. We don't get a ton into that in this one, but those are some things that we'll talk about here as well. So let's do though before I continue going on here talk a little bit about what otherwise what the premise is, because I mentioned obviously the justice and the clerk. So our justice is Conrad von Walt, who has a very supreme sense of justice and morals, and is presented in that way, and his young clerk Helena, who was yes an orphan and who he basically took along and trained, and has trained her as a clerk. And so we're seeing it through her eyes, which I do think again is an interesting way to do it. Instead of the justice, it's the clerk doing it. And that's kind of what we're following, and it's following the base setup of they get involved in a really tricky case that has way bigger implications than it initially seems, but at the same time there's a much bigger thing going on, where there's unrest in the Empire of the Wolf, and there's sort of the enemy, and there's potential for like a holy war, and bigger, much bigger consequences as well to the order of the justices of the Empire as well. And so kind of set up there, and again, sort of what you would expect, I feel like, from it. So nothing that was totally like new or surprising there, but I still felt like overall, I mean, really well written. And also, I think a big thing that the saving grace for this compared to the book I compared it to, Speaks the Nightbird, is it never feels at all too long. This moves very quickly, and it's like 400 pages in hardcover, but it felt really fast to get through, at least for me. And I was engaged, and I got through this very, very quickly. So, whereas Speaks the Nightbird was the writing, I would say, is better, but it also was way like hundreds of pages too long, in my opinion. And so this definitely didn't do that. So I think that really helps. It's doing some familiar things and does feel like it's going to be setting a lot more up to come up, but it also isn't overstaying its welcome with the page count, which I feel like you can sometimes get. And when something feels a little bit too familiar as well, if you already feel like that and then it keeps going, I found that definitely can slow me down, so didn't have to deal with that as much with this one. So I do want to talk a little bit about the magic, because I think that's the big thing that was quite interesting, because you have the like the Emperor's voice, which I've seen similar things where people can like channel some of that power This is a little bit different, but it's basically the justices, they're trained with the ability, they can like sort of command, and it's said to be part of the emperor's voice, but it's basically magic, and it can compel somebody to speak the truth. Allegedly, you never know. It seems like it is the truth, but there are some comments there. But you have that where it's they can compel somebody to speak, and so that's a really important thing, because it doesn't always work, and it doesn't always work perfectly. But you can compel somebody to tell the truth, and confess to something that they actually did, or give you details, or whatnot, things like that as well. And then there are some other things we see a little bit less of, including necromancy. And there's bits of talks of the lore about how, in general, the religion that's been set up in this empire, it's talked about really early on, is sort of absorbs other religions and other customs as this empire has expanded. The empire just kind of adopts these things, adds it to its own, and so the justices are said to have an arsenal of different sorts of magics that come from different times. And so that bit of world building I did find really interesting, so I'll be curious to see where that goes in the rest of the series, as well. And I think those things kind of work, and it is setting up some things to potentially be different. The other thing though is like, we do have, and no spoilers here, but we do have, like, the general, like, the mystery, the kind of trying to figure things out, and things happening there. And then we do have a longer bit of trial in here as well in the book, which also just again felt really familiar. It was the same base kind of thing you expect from a trial. It's not quite the, I'm just but a country lawyer, I can't understand these things of the empire, but it's basically that. It's just like the very stereotypical court scene where it's more about calling into question the investigator or the that type of thing. It's been done in every TV show, movie, that type of thing as well. So really, really familiar. Again, not quite doing anything super different with the trial. So well done, well executed, but just very, very familiar. I do feel a few other things that did become a little bit more negative for me, is one with the main character, Helena, who I feel like this is one of those things, and I was just talking about this with female authors writing female characters better than male authors, but still writing male characters usually very good. There were some things with the character of Helena that I just felt kind of odd with her, being the young woman, and apprentice to an older man. Just let you figure out some comments that are made, but also just her, like, her bit of, she has a little bit of like a romance subplot in there as well, which I just found to be particularly annoying in some ways, although not entirely unreasonable for the age of the characters. But there were a few things there where I'm just like, I don't know that feels like the right thing for this character. But there were just some things as well that felt quite contrived, especially toward the end, where things just happened to be in the right place, things just happening to kind of work out, and a little bit too conveniently. And again, I think it's moving quickly. It's just trying to get where it's going, so it can be forgivable. But it's I feel like, especially if you're gonna do sort of the mystery thing, and that's supposed to be a big part of the book, when you sort of just make things fall into place, that's just not my preferred kind of mystery. I know that's not uncommon, and I'm far from well read in the sort of mystery type of genre. But from what I have read, the mysteries I tend to like is when it really is like you're having to figure things out and make it work, and it makes logical sense, not just like, oh, we just happen to be in the same room with the clue that we needed and we didn't know, and blah blah blah, which isn't quite what happens here. But in the same vein, where things just sort of fall into place without there being a real effort necessarily to have them fall into place. And so it's just one of those things as well. So overall, I ended up giving this about a 3.5, and it's probably closer to a 3 for me. But I went to 3.5 and gave it a little bit more, just because I do think this is well written, and I've other things like this where I've had similar complaints if it wasn't as well written, that I'd probably complain more. But I thought the writing style was good, and this is obviously, it shows that Richard Swan certainly can write. And a lot of the things here is more so not the way the book is actually written, just some of the elements of it that didn't work as well for me. So I gave about 3.5 and benefit of the doubt with rounding, but it probably could go either way for me, because I thought this was solid. My concern is that, as I mentioned, people tend to say the first book is the best. So I'm unsure, like, I am planning to try the next book and see how I feel, but I'm unsure how it's going to go if everybody says the first book is the best, and I'm not as high on the first book as a lot of people were, which some of it, like I said, is just based on other things that I've read. and my reading experience is where it kind of landed for me. So I am curious. So let me know your thoughts on that too. If you've read the whole thing, if you think that I'm not probably going to like the next books more, or based on my thoughts on this one and the things that I did like, will I like them more? I'm really curious. So let me know if you have any thoughts there. That's really it for this one, though. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the links in the description, as always, for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizard of the Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.